Let's start, though, with Russia's war in Ukraine. It's now knocked the largest nuclear power plant in Europe offline, renewing fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, under Russian occupation, was disconnected from the country's power grid earlier today. The UN's nuclear watchdog says power has since been restored, but all 6 reactors there remain disconnected from the grid. Bob Rae is Canada's ambassador to the UN. He's in New York. Hi, Ambassador Rae. Good to have you on the program, as always.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.
I do want to start off with the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and just gauge from your perspective how concerning it is that it was disconnected from the power grid. I know there have been some improvements since, but just the fact that happened at all.
It's terrible. It's very. I mean, the Ukrainian people are very vulnerable to not having electricity, to not having the ability to provide for themselves. They're very dependent on this one particular plant. The Russians know that. I think a lot of what the Russians are trying to do is just create as much uncertainty for the Ukrainian people as possible, and to destroy their morale. I mean, that's one of the key strategies in any war, is to destroy the morale of the other side. That's exactly what the Russians are trying to do. But I think they're discovering, which is what I think the world is discovering over the last 6 months, that the Ukrainian people are incredibly determined and that their morale is very strong. And all of the indications we've seen in public opinion support that idea.
And I have more to ask you on that in a second, but just where the plant is concerned, I know the UN's nuclear watchdog is trying very hard to gain access. There were some comments today that might even be happening soon. They're also calling for the plant to be demilitarized. Do you have any light you can shed for us on why it hasn't happened yet? Is this, essentially because of the Russians not allowing it? And do you have any hope that it will in the near future?
Well, I know the Secretary General is trying hard. I'm going to be visiting him tomorrow in New York here and having a conversation with him about that, as well as about Haiti and other issues that are a deep concern to us at the moment. And I hope to get a sense from him. He's been spending a lot of time on this. He was in Ukraine quite recently, meeting with people there. I know they're in contact with the Russian ambassador and with others. I think the Russians are being very irresponsible, and they continue to play games and casting all the blame on the Ukrainian side. But it's in everyone's interest to demilitarize a nuclear plant. Just to repeat the words, you'd want a nuclear plant to be demilitarized, to stop lobbing bombs at it, to stop making it a central center point for military conflict, and to making sure that it's safe. So getting the IAEA, the Atomic Energy Agency, there, very skilled, very experienced inspectors, getting them there to give us an accurate view of what's happening is very critical. And we're continuing to push that and to push for that and to do whatever we can to encourage both sides to get it done.
Do you think it will happen? The visit would happen?
Yes, I do. I believe it will happen. And the reason I believe it will happen is because it's the right thing to do. And eventually even the Russians realize that playing poker with a nuclear plant is a terrible thing to do.
On the wider conflict, on the wider war, and the fact that we're entering now the seventh month today, the 6th month, or 6 months was marked yesterday. What is your sense of the level of engagement? I know we've spoken to so many Ukrainian MPs, for example, on the program, who have expressed concern that the protracted nature of the war could lead to less engagement from the world. We have heard multiple world leaders just in the past 24 hours say that's not going to be the case. We're there for the long haul. What is your sense of that? Do you have any concern that as the war goes on, the level of engagement and thereby perhaps even help could dissipate?
Well, I wouldn't say, if I say I don't have any concern, it sounds like I'm not sympathetic to the level of concern. Of course, a country going through the agony that Ukraine is going through is always going to be concerned about, well, what is the level of interest and what is the level of support from around the world? When I've just come back from a trip to Haiti, and of course, people living in Haiti say, you guys aren't paying attention to us because you're paying all your attention to Ukraine. So one of the things that we do in Canada is we pay attention to the crises that are there, and we try to stay the course with all of them. And to make a point of focusing our time and attention, I was doing a call today with the Rohingya refugees who are commemorating the 5th anniversary of the genocide and the forcible deportation in Myanmar. And they're concerned, are you losing interest? The answer is no, we're not losing interest. The solutions are difficult. And on Ukraine, my sense is that the level of support and the level of deep engagement by governments around the world is extremely high, and not just by governments. I think the general population of Canada, I think the general public opinion in our country, I think is enormously supportive of the Ukrainian people. And I think that's going to continue. It's frustrating, it's difficult. We're not physically on the same front lines that people of Ukraine are. Of course, people who are having bombs dropped on them wonder whether anybody else is watching. The answer is we are. And I think we do have to make every effort to get the Russians to pull out. And I don't think we should stop until that happens.
And just on that exact note, I remember interviewing not too long ago, or a little while ago actually, the former Canadian ambassador to Ukraine, Roman Waschuk, who essentially said his biggest worry is that the West is supplying Ukraine with enough aid, with enough military might to keep the Russians at bay, but to not actually defeat them. What do you think of that assessment or that fear? And do you think he could be right?
Well, I certainly hope he isn't right. I don't think that's really what's happening. I think the aid was announced yesterday by President Biden of another $3 billion in military aid. The amount of military assistance that has been provided to Ukraine is unprecedented. But I'm very sympathetic to what Roman says. I call him by his first name because he's a friend of mine. What Roman says is, I think, very important. And that is the purpose of the exercise is not to do the least possible. The purpose of the exercise is to actually defeat what the Russians have been trying to do. I think we've stalled them. I think we've made their lives incredibly difficult. I think we've made this war far more painful than the Russians ever anticipated. But we have got to see a movement that will actually end in Russia not achieving the war aims which they set out and being forced to settle on a basis that they would never have imagined possible 6 months ago. And I remain optimistic that objective is shared by Western leaders. It's shared by my government. And I know it's an objective that's widely shared around the world. I discussed this issue with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland a couple of weeks ago in Toronto when I was visiting there. And we had a very good discussion about the importance of staying the course of Ukraine. And the course is, as I said, it's not just saying, oh, we've done this, we've done that, we've done this, we've done that. The purpose is victory. And we can't settle for anything less than that.
Ambassador, just before I let you go, I just wanted to get your thoughts on one other subject we've discussed before with you on the program, and that is the Uyghurs. In the UN investigation report that's being conducted by the human rights chief, she said today that she's hoping to publish that report by the end of her time in office, and I think it's at the end of the month. But before it had been like a commitment to get it out. Now she's hoping. Are you aware of why the release of that might be delayed, and your thoughts on if it doesn't get out before the end of her term?
Well, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, she's leaving, right? So I'm not going to pile it on. But to me, and I think I reflect the view. I know I reflect the views of the Canadian government, both in Geneva, where Ambassador Norton has been making clear representations to the High Commissioner, and here in New York, we've been making it very clear the report should be published. The report is written. It's not like saying, I hope it gets finished. She has the report. She has a published report. There's no excuse for not getting it out. The only person who controls that is her. It's her report.
Is this China attempting to block it? There has been some reporting, I believe, by Reuters that they had sent letters to diplomats saying, very, contending that the report was not valid and that there were major issues with it. I think she's made an assertion that there's Chinese feedback that's going into it. Like, is that your impression at all? Could they be holding it up?
Well, I don't think there's any question at all that the Chinese have been making very strong representations, but I don't know under what process a human rights commission would would say we're going to allow the perpetrators of this injustice, of this genocide, we're going to allow them to comment and see the report and review it and then get their feedback on it before we publish the report. I mean, what level of independence does that reflect? I'm not quite sure. I think if you have a report, you publish the report and you get it done.
Okay, Ambassador, I'll leave it there. Appreciate your time. As always, thank you.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.